Okay, well, good morning. And if you're watching a recording of this video, this is Political Science 1, class number 30672. My name is Paul Savoy. It is Monday, April 20th, and we're just going to be waiting just a couple of minutes to see if anyone joins the chat live. And if so, we'll get started right away. And if not, after a couple of minutes, I will go ahead and go through some important information for you if you are watching on the recording. So just stand by for a moment or two and we'll get rolling. All right, so let's go ahead and get going for today. And several things that we want to accomplish this morning. First thing is to mention upcoming assignment due dates, specifically talking for a couple of minutes about the assignment that is due this coming Wednesday. That is April 22nd at 11:59 p.m., not counting the grace period, of course. That is the discussion forum post on campaigns and elections. And then to talk a little bit also about our next test, test number 2, which is going to be due a week from this coming Wednesday. That is April 29th, again at 11:59 p.m. And again, not counting the 3-day grace period. As we'll talk about, the actual test number 2 is available for you. It is open to you on our class Canvas page. So I'll go over that, go over the format, talk a little bit about how to get the best results with test number 2. And I'll also talk a little bit today as well about the subject that most of you should be working on right now, and that is the discussion forum post for campaigns and elections, and also make a couple more general observations about our evolving political situation here in the United States as we continue to deal with the COVID-19 crisis, and how some of that connects, how some recent political events, some very recent events, connect with some of the major ideas, some of the major course themes that we've been talking about since the beginning of the semester. So we'll do that as well. And so why don't we go ahead and get straight into it? So first of all, well, let me go ahead and talk a little bit not about campaigns and elections. We'll talk about that in a bit more detail in a couple of minutes. But let me talk about the next sort of major assignment that you're going to be having due in this class. And it has been up and available for you on our Canvas homepage since I believe it was the 15th. So last Wednesday, excuse me, and that is test number 2. Now, if you recall, originally back when this was going to be or supposed to be a fully face-to-face class, we had 4 tests scheduled throughout the course of the semester, and the lowest test score out of the 4 would drop. And when we realized that we were going to be going online with this class and for all your other classes at LBCC for the remainder of the semester, I went ahead and made some adjustments in the schedule, which I've already talked about here on the weekly videos. Also sent you lots of Canvas announcements about. So as you know, we are now taking 3 tests during the semester instead of 4, but your low test score out of the 3 still will be dropped and will not be counted towards your final course grade because, you know, fair is fair. So if you go ahead and go to the assignments tab on Canvas and then scroll down to where it says test number 2 and click on that link, you will see test number 2. And what you will notice is that for the most part, the format for test number 2 and the format for test number 3, which will be due at the very end of the semester, is pretty much the same as the format that you are used to from our first test that you took in class face-to-face several weeks ago, back before we went fully online with the class. So it's the same 2-part format that you're used to for test number 1. Part 1, of course, is the short answer section. There's a list of terms there. I think I put, if I recall correctly, I think 25 terms for you for part 1. And you'll be answering any 8 of those. Same format as last time, about 3 to 4 complete sentences each. And you're identifying and stating the significance of those 8 terms that you choose. Part 2, same as last time as well. There are 4 potential mini essay questions listed for you. You can choose and answer any one of those 4 questions, and your response should be in approximately 5 paragraphs. So it's basically the same format. Now, the only differences that you will notice for test number 2 as compared with test number 1, the first difference is obvious. You're going to be taking test number 2 at home. You're going to be submitting it to me via Canvas. And when you look at the assignment guidelines for test number 2, it talks about how you will submit your test via Canvas. You have 2 choices. You can either, enter your text or cut or paste your text into a text entry box, or you can go ahead and submit it to me via Canvas as a file, either a doc file, a docx file, or a PDF file. But all that information is listed on the assignment guidelines. But the big difference is, since you will be taking the test at home and then submitting it to me via Canvas, the test is completely open book and open note. So, we're not going to use Proctorio or any of those online sort of test security, test watchdog programs that are out there. The test will not be timed. So it's not like you'll have, exactly an hour and 25 minutes to do the test, and there'll be, someone watching you through your camera or something like that. Nothing like that. You will be fine. Your test will be eligible to be graded for full credit as long as you turn it in either by the assigned due date for the test, which again is a week from this coming Wednesday, the 29th of April at 11:59 p.m. But also remember, you do have that 72-hour grace period for test number 2, as well as all other assignments that we'll be doing in this class between now and the end of the semester. So in other words, you have 72 hours or 3 days after the due date for the assignment to submit the assignment to me via Canvas. And if you do it within that 3-day grace period, you will be graded at full credit for the test. I will not deduct any points for lateness or anything like that. Excuse me. So that's one difference. Open book, open note. So as you are working on your test, feel free to have all of your class notes out available to you. Please feel free to refer to the assigned readings as much as you want to. If you want to look back at some of the assigned or parts of the assigned videos that you've been watching, that's fine too. So that's the one difference. The other difference is that for part 2, for your mini essay, the only thing that you are submitting to me via Canvas is your approximately 5-paragraph essay. So unlike test number 1, you will not need to submit to me an outline for your essay. The reason that I had you develop an outline for your essay in advance of test number 1 and bring it with you to class was to give you an advantage, to give you an opportunity to write a better, more effective essay. Since you were under a time constraint, you only had an hour and 25 minutes to complete the test. You were completing the test in class. I thought it made sense to have you think about your answer to the essay question in advance, kind of lay out the basic framework of your answer in an outline so that you could refer to it during the test while you were writing the essay. Well, there's no need for it that now. The test is not timed, and it's completely open book and open note. So no need to worry about developing an essay outline for the mini essay in part 2. Just write out your approximately 5-paragraph response, submit that to me via Canvas, and you will be in good shape. Now, another thing that hasn't changed is that the tests in this class are not cumulative. So once I test you on a concept, I will not test you on that same concept again. Therefore, test number 2, as you'll see when you look at it, is only covering what I talked about since test number 1, what we've read about, the videos that you've looked at, all that sort of thing. So it's covering what we've done so far, dealing with public opinion, and then dealing with our 4 linkage mechanisms. So mass media, political parties, interest groups, as well as campaigns and elections. Okay, so if you have questions as you start working on test number 2, there's a number of ways that you can get your questions answered. Obviously, you can always send me a Canvas message or an email, ask me your question, or next week, our weekly Zoom meeting next Monday, again, as always, from 8 to 8:45 a.m. I will be devoting as much of that time as you want to answering questions about the test. Now, obviously, I will not give you the answers to the test, but I'm happy to answer clarifying questions, give you things to think about. If there is a concept that you've been reviewing that isn't quite making sense to you, I can go over that sort of thing. So please feel free to use next week's Zoom meeting as an opportunity to get any questions about the test answered as well. Plus, remember, and I talked about this, sent you a Canvas message about this last week, every Monday and Wednesday starting last week until the end of the semester, I'm going to be providing for you a couple of virtual student hours per week. So, and this is all talked about on our Canvas homepage. If you scroll down our Canvas homepage past the picture to where it says basic course information, you'll see all of this talked about, or you can refer back to the Canvas message that I sent you last Monday. The same information is there as well. So Monday and Wednesday afternoons from 2:30 until 3:30 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, I will be live on Zoom and doing basically my student hours. What I would have been doing if we were back face-to-face on campus. If you recall, when we were on campus, I had a number of student hours per week. So students could stop by during those student hours, stop by my office and physically ask me questions. We could talk about whatever you needed to talk about, anything dealing directly with the class, indirectly with the class, or anything else that you thought I might be able to help you out with. So I'm doing that now on Zoom. And of course, that would be a great opportunity either this Monday, this Wednesday, or next Monday or next Wednesday to ask me any questions that you have about test number 2. Now, if you want to join me for any or all of my Zoom virtual student hours, you access the student hours in a different way than you would access this weekly Zoom meeting for our class. So again, if you take a look either at the Canvas message I sent for you last Monday, or scroll down our homepage on Canvas to where it says basic course information, you'll see the Zoom link for my Monday, Wednesday virtual student hours right there for you. And so you click on that link and you go straight to the student hours. So you do not access the virtual student hours via the ConferZoom link on our Canvas course page, okay? And the reason for that is because the Zoom virtual student office hours are for all 7 of my classes that I'm teaching at LBCC this semester, not just for our class. And so that's why the virtual student hours Zoom link does not appear via the ConferZoom link on our course homepage. So if you decide to visit my virtual student hours, once you click on that link and you get in, you are put into a virtual waiting room. So if you find yourself in the virtual waiting room, that means that I am already working with another student. So please be patient, just hang out for a few minutes. And as soon as I'm done working with the other student, I will bring you into the main Zoom discussion. I will admit you out of the waiting room and in to talk to me, and we can deal with whatever you need to deal with. Okay, so lots of opportunities either via email, via Canvas message, via Zoom for you to get your questions about test number 2 answered. Okay, so that again, test number 2 is due a week from this coming Wednesday, April 29th, 11:59 p.m. plus the 3-day grace period. So let me just talk briefly about the assignment that all of you are probably working on right now. And that is the discussion forum post assignment for the last of our 4 linkage mechanisms dealing with campaigns and elections. Now, here's the thing. If you had tuned in either live last Monday morning or taken a look at the recording from last Monday morning's class Zoom meeting, you'll know that I spent a few minutes going ahead and giving you a general overview of the campaigns and elections notes and added a few highlights that really weren't included in the notes in all that much detail as well. So if you've done the assigned reading for campaigns and elections, if you've looked at the crash course videos for campaigns and elections, if you've gone over the notes for campaigns and elections and you are still a little bit hazy, a little bit unclear, then please do feel free to take a look at the Zoom recording from last Monday. You can get the recordings from all of our weekly class meetings in the same way that you would join the meeting live. Click on the ConferZoom link on our Canvas page, and then once you get there, click on the link that says recordings, and then you'll get the menu of the recordings that we have. Click on the recording for last Monday, which would have been the 13th of April, and you can hear the discussion or review the discussion if you were there live, dealing with campaigns and elections. So since I don't have anybody live with me right now, I'm not going to ask for questions because it seems kind of silly to question myself. So instead, what I am going to do is spend the last few minutes, assuming that no one else joins me live between now and then. I want to spend a few minutes talking a little bit about a couple of issues dealing with American politics as they are happening right now, as we are all living through these unprecedented circumstances, as we are all living through the ongoing COVID-19 crisis here in the United States. And I want to draw a couple of what I think are some pretty important connections to what we were talking about in Poli-Sci 1 in our class, going all the way back to the beginning of the semester, back when we were still face-to-face, back when we were talking during the first couple of weeks of the semester about our major course themes, the big ideas that we were going to be visiting and revisiting a lot during the course of the semester. And so certainly, I think that, there are a couple of big ideas from, our ongoing discussions from our major course themes that are very relevant to things that are happening in the United States right now, specifically things that are happening politically in the United States as a direct result of the ongoing COVID-19 situation that we are all living through. Now, if you recall from our major course themes discussion, one of our major course themes dealt with this question, or this reality, that especially over the past 15 or 20 years or so, we have seen a tremendous growth in the United States of what we refer to as being partisan and ideological polarization. So in other words, we said that our elected political leaders amongst themselves, as well as we as the American people amongst ourselves, were becoming more and more broadly and bitterly divided on issues of political ideologies, that is, our political belief systems, what we believe government should be doing and how government should be doing it and why government should be doing it. And also, very closely related to issues of political belief or political ideology is a growing polarization, a growing division, separation, increasing bitterness, increasing anger between folks who cling to, attach themselves to one of our two major political parties, which since the Civil War, as we've talked about a lot in this class in recent weeks, have been the Republicans and the Democrats. So folks who call themselves Republicans and folks who call themselves Democrat have become more and more bitterly divided. And we talked in class at the beginning of the semester about some of the reasons why that was. Now, here's the thing. We also said, and kind of the major part of the theme that I wanted you to keep in mind as we made our way through the entire semester, was this question as to if this polarization were to continue, if we, the people, were becoming more divided amongst each other and more bitterly and angrily divided, and if the same thing was happening amongst our elected political leaders in Washington, D.C. or Sacramento or wherever it was, does that represent a threat to the continuation of our democratic political system? Because remember, as we've talked about since the very beginning of the semester, we live in what we call a representative democracy, otherwise known as a republic. In other words, we, the people, elect a very small number of people from amongst us through elections to hold positions of power in government and make governmental decisions, make political decisions on our behalf. So we, the people, don't directly govern, we don't directly rule, but in a representative democracy, folks in government are supposed to do what the people want them to do, because that's democracy, right? And so the issue that we talked about at the beginning of the semester, we asked the question, well, as we, the people, become more bitterly and angrily divided amongst ourselves, as Republicans versus Democrats, conservatives versus liberals, and as the same division is occurring amongst our elected officials in the White House, in Congress, in our state governments, et cetera, does that mean that our democratic system of governance is starting to fail? Because think about it. The more bitterly divided we, the people, become, the more difficult it becomes for we, the people, to be able to reach consensus. That is, to reach mutual agreements amongst ourselves as to what we want government to do. So if we, the people, can't figure it out, what we want government to do and how we want government to do it, we therefore can't send a clear message to government as to what we want government to do. And if we do not send a clear message to government about what we want them to do, then one of two things will happen. One possibility is that government will just do whatever the heck it wants, and government may have a hard time figuring that out because government officials are just as bitterly divided as we are on the basis of ideology or partisan polarization or anything like that. Or government, if they're not instructed by the people as to what to do, government will sit there and just kind of flap around a little bit and not get anything done. So remember what we said, that the framers themselves knew that when they were creating the governmental system that we still have today through the US Constitution, that it was a system based on compromise, right? That two warring sides have to come together. They have to reach common ground in order for government to move forward, in order for government to get anything done. And as we've seen, it's become more and more challenging, really starting in the 1980s, but really accelerating over the past 15 to 20 years for that to happen. Because, you know, today, Republicans look at Democrats, Democrats look at Republicans, and they see the other side not just as being wrong in their beliefs, but being stupid, as being evil. Each side sees the other as wanting to destroy the country, and that is a really big barrier to compromise, as we talked about at the beginning of the semester. So here's the thing, right? If you've been paying any attention to the news over the past few days, and hopefully you are paying some attention, you're taking a look, as we've talked about in a previous week's Zoom meeting, that you are taking a look at the news maybe 2 or 3 times a day. Certainly don't be following it 24/7 because you'll be put into the depths of fear and despair because of all the endless COVID-19 news and the incomplete reporting and all of that stuff. But, you know, if you check into the news as you should a couple, 2, 3 times a day, one thing that you'll know is, especially over the past 4 or 5 days or so, we've seen a number of protests, some of them as few as 10 people, others as few as as many as several hundred people, protesters in various other states across the country, but also some here in Southern California, particularly in Orange County, in Huntington Beach about 4 or 5 days ago, in San Clemente just yesterday, also in South Orange County. People out protesting what they refer to as having their freedoms unnecessarily and excessively taken away by government, and mainly in the forms of the various shelter-in-place orders that we have in a lot of parts of the country, but that we especially have here in the state of California, where we're basically being told by our state and local governments, our state, county, and city governments, hey, look, if we want to flatten the curve, we want to slow the spread of COVID-19 as much as possible. So please stay home unless there are any essential activities that you need to go out for. So in other words, don't leave your house unless you're needing to, you know, go to the grocery store, you know, go to the doctor, some essential thing that you just have to do. Other than that, stay sheltered in place. So we flatten the curve and slow the spread of the disease. And this is the recommendation, not just of our political leaders at the state, county, and local levels, but also the recommendation of most infectious disease specialists in the country, because they're saying, look, if we slow the spread of this, then our healthcare system, our hospitals, and especially our intensive care units in the hospitals will not become overloaded. And, the healthcare system will be maintained. It won't overstretch. It won't collapse, that sort of thing. And you're hearing countless doctors and nurses on the front line saying, please stay at home, slow the spread of this disease. Don't overwhelm us, right? But despite all of that, or because some of all of that, there are a number of folks, and let's face it, these are mostly folks holding a more conservative political ideology. They tend to self-identify as Republicans. They tend to self-identify as Trump supporters. Many of them are carrying Trump 2020 re-election banners and flags and signs and stuff like that, along with American flags and the old, don't tread on me flag from the American Revolution, the one with the coiled snake. And they're out there and they are protesting. For example, in South Orange County, in the city of San Clemente yesterday, there were several hundred protesters who were obviously violating the social distancing guidelines. They weren't staying at least 6 feet apart from each other. They were protesting, marching in a group. They started down from the main beach area near the Municipal Pier in San Clemente, and they began walking up the main downtown shopping street, Avenida Del Mar, and they were protesting this. They were carrying signs saying, government restore our liberty, etc., and some signs saying some very non-complimentary things about the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, who has issued most of these shelter-in-place orders, and basically suggesting that there could be a revolution if these unnecessary, unfair restrictions on our freedoms and liberties are not removed immediately. And so I think, and again, a lot of these, there haven't been a lot of these protests in the country, especially on the West Coast. But, as we see more and more of these, and as we see some states, for example, the state of Florida, over the weekend relaxed some of their shelter-in-place restrictions. They reopened public beaches in Florida, and people were, kind of massing together again, not social distancing, doing all that stuff. I think as time goes on, we're likely to see more and more of these protests. And it's interesting. There was actually a counter protest, one protest, and unfortunately, forgive me, I don't remember which state this took place in, but some of these, give me liberty or give me death protests that had been taking place, to use a famous statement from Patrick Henry during the American Revolution. A group of protesters actually blockaded a street outside a hospital and were not letting ambulances leave or go in to the hospital. And apparently a number of doctors and nurses, and I saw the video on this, actually came out from the hospital and were, arguing with the protesters, saying, people could die because you're not letting ambulances into the hospital. So please disperse. If you're going to protest, fine. Protest somewhere else where you're not putting lives at stake. And so it is that example. And again, the protesters were carrying the Trump 2020 flags and the American flags and all these signs and banners. And this shows you that kind of the latest manifestation of this partisan and ideological polarization that we are seeing, is stemming from the fact that a number of states, some controlled by Democrats, but not all. I mean, state of Ohio is leading the way with shelter in place and these sorts of things. The governor of Ohio is a Republican, former member of Congress, Mike DeWine. But in a lot of places, we're seeing a lot of ideological or partisan clashes on this issue of whether or not social distancing is needed, whether or not sheltering in place is needed. And some of these protesters are even suggesting that the COVID-19 virus is fake news, that it's not real, or that it's not as serious as it is made out to be. It is not the public health threat that it is made out to be, and that the government has no business taking away our liberties, our freedom of movement as a result of this. So, think about this. Here is where political ideology, political belief system is clashing with the expert opinion of epidemiologists, emergency room doctors, and other folks who you would hope, you would think, would have, the best knowledge of what's going on and how best to combat it. And so it's a really interesting scenario. And it'll be interesting to see in the states where the protests become big and where the shelter in place orders are ended rather early, rather perhaps prematurely, whether or not that is going to cause a further significant outbreak of COVID-19 in those places. But these examples do demonstrate that even in a crisis situation like this, maybe even we should say, especially in crisis situations like this, this is when we see the impact of the extreme partisan polarization and division we've had building in society for quite some time now. It comes to the fore, it becomes very important, and it really does impact government's ability to take decisive, consistent action. Okay, so as you see, the major course themes that we talked about at the beginning of the semester, we didn't just talk about them because, Savoy is always making us learn this stuff and it's not really relevant, but whatever. This stuff really is relevant, and it really does impact how our lives are lived and how government responds to our needs and wants and desires from day to day. So there you go. One other quick potential tie-in, one other quick potential connection to another major course theme that we talked about at the beginning of the semester would have to do with, remember, the reading that you are doing now, a lot of it is voluntary, not required.